Hi.
The Unfinished Swan. It's a adventure puzzle exploration game. A really cool one at that. That really took me for a ride. I wasn't expecting much from it whenever I was going into it, but whenever I actually played through this experience, it was one that I was deeply, deeply surprised by, both in the depths of the mechanics that they explored in ideas that I've never really engaged with before, but also on top of a very subtle storytelling that really was entrenched in the environment itself. And it was really, really cool to just see how they wanted to take the ideas of distinct puzzle mechanics and apply them to storytelling, and how individually the player gets to engage with the world itself. And honestly, I want to talk about it. Let's talk about the Unfinished Swan. The game opens up with a cutscene describing who we, the player character, are. We are Monroe, an orphaned boy who is the son of a woman who appears to be a painter, but specifically a woman who can never quite finish any of her paintings. And when she passes, we, as Monroe, get to choose one painting, and that painting is the Unfinished Swan. And then after we receive this painting, the game opens up into gameplay. The Unfinished Swan is gone, and we are in a giant white room. And the only reason we can tell this, the only reason we know that we are playing now versus whenever it was a cutscene, is a small, faint hit marker in the center to show us that we, the player, are able to play now. And this is probably one of my favorite moments from the game, just because of how it kind of introduced you to the concept and gets you to engage with some pretty awesome basic human instincts. Because you go from watching a cutscene where you're just kind of actively engaged and listening and paying attention to blank whiteness. You kind of just sit there for a second, waiting for something to happen. And you're like, maybe I'm playing, and so you start pressing on your keys. You kind of hear movement, you kind of hear the character is doing something. And then you're like, okay, maybe I am playing. And so you do what every player does whenever they're unsure if their controls are working. And they press every button on their keyboard, or specifically, the left mouse button. And you just shoot out a black dot that just splatters the wall. And then now suddenly it's very easy to tell where in the room you are, because you can just always keep finding this black dot. And now you see the game is using your black paint to contrast the environment and help you navigate it. Which is, hey, that's really cool. That's a really cool mechanic to go from no field view, no depth of where you are, to you get to determine how you see the world. You get to determine what you see. And the game kind of progresses going forward in that way. We navigate through our house, we go down this path, and we find the swan. Or we see its footprints, specifically, and we now have ways of indicating how to find it. We have to follow these footprints around a pond to the front gates of a castle. What are you? That's the king, as we come to learn. This is his castle, and he thought that no color was good enough to paint his castle. And in doing so, we are actually left with some of the coolest subtle guiding I've ever felt in games. You know how like in modern games they have like yellow paint on certain locations to show you where to go, certain signs, some things will sparkle to show you where to go. In a game where like there is no visual environment until you decide it exists, they have such a good job of guiding your eye. If you can't see anything of significance, you're not standing in the right place. And you can tell by the different instances of gold, something that we've been told to look out for previously by the goose feet prints. And as we move through this palace, we continue looking for those hints of gold, and we find them, but it's not Goose Prince instead. Now it's the feet of a chicken. Now it's the tail of a pig. Now it's a ring on a finger. And we are kind of guided through this experience. We're like kind of honing us in towards different experience in different zones. So even though this game, you don't have to technically engage with anything on purpose, they're still guiding you, which is really cool. It's really cool that you can have such an open experience and still be able to kind of gently push them in a direction. And then we also get to one of the really, really cool puzzles, which at first I didn't even realize the intent of the puzzle, because it's this room that you're kind of suspended over a space. It's like a stair-step motion like that. We see goose feet pointing us up in a direction, up a wall, a place that we cannot walk up. We have no way to traverse that. And so we instead explore in different directions. We explore left and right. As you go from room to room, you realize that it's the same paint that you've put on the previous floor. And so now your mind starts to kind of turn the gears of like, okay, maybe there's not multiple rooms I'm entering, but one room. And so that must be true for beneath me as well. And above me. They must be the same room. So if I jump down, I'm jumping down into the same room. And so when I jump down, I should jump down onto the platform that I'm trying to reach. And that's just really cool subtlety, that you slowly learn this, that it's very progressive in the way that they expect you to engage with the environment as it kind of comes to you, or more specifically, as you go to it. It starts to make more and more sense. And then we learn what the king is doing. We learn that his hubris may be a little bit bigger than he realizes, that his beautiful white kingdom isn't exactly made for human beings. And he has to learn to adapt and provide for his people as he has people. And this led me to wonder, how are they going to incorporate this storytelling element into the puzzle design? And honestly, they did a fantastic job, because what the king has decided to do is he has decided to paint in shadows into his kingdom. Because obviously, without contrast, it's so hard to see anything. And that is abundantly clear in the way that we approach the problem by painting our own way through the world. But now he has to paint shadows around the world and create clear-cut guidelines. And what this does actually, which I think is a really cool distinction, is we now go from having to control our own experience of how we engage with the things that come to us as we go into them. We now have to go through these prescribed ideas of linear progression, and it is our job to navigate what he has decided exists. Because the king determines the shadows, right? He paints them himself. And so now we go from us making the decisions to having to navigate his decisions. And this is displayed perfectly with a maze. And as we navigate this, we reach the top of the castle, overlooking what the king had decided the kingdom to be. And it's really cool to see that he's kind of struggling with these two ideas of what he wants, and then now having to struggle with the role of an authority of not just deciding what he wants, but now deciding what everyone will have to deal with. But then it's time to move on. We have to keep chasing the swan. So we don't quite reach the swan. We take off in this air balloon, and we feel this kind of sensation of free, as we're kind of leaving behind someone else's creation to pursue something that could be purely for us, as we are chasing our mother swan. But in reality, we come to terms pretty quickly with that we are not chasing, more than that we are being led. And it becomes abundantly clear whenever we are constantly just in reach of the swan, and we are brought back down to Earth. More specifically, we're brought back down into the empty city. Now, the empty city is actually quite interesting, because we find that our paint has been exchanged for something new. we are now in a civilized civilization, so it would be insanely rude for us to go and paint people's houses, to paint people's homes, even if they don't live here anymore. We still need to be semi-respectful of what they represent, and so we have exchanged paint blobs for water balloons. We find that this section is actually quite different in comparison to the previous one, because now we are not getting to mark our way through. Now we instead have to just explore what is being given to us. Now this is what I'll give to this game, is that they actually do have one of the more interesting approaches to design for puzzles that I think I've seen in a bit, because it's not like a regular puzzle game where they present to you everything, where it's all of the information and it is your job to then come up with a creative solution to the information that you've been provided. Instead, it is much more like a drip of parts and pieces. It's not really intellectually challenging to solve the puzzles. Instead, it's much more about a moment of curiosity. That aha moment whenever you're like, oh, this is where I'm supposed to go. This is the way that I'm supposed to follow this path. They're not exactly intellectually obscuring anything from you. They're physically obscuring it from you. And they are, in the same way that we are being led by the Swan, they are leading us to the solutions of the puzzles. Like, for instance, many things are in plain view the whole time, but there's a context to it that we have to find out for ourselves. Like in the previous section, that was whenever we would see the hints of gold and be like, oh, obviously that's the Swan's footprints, and then we would have to go and find out instead what it is instead. And in this section, it's navigating the town to find out what happened to the townspeople. After navigating this empty city, we find ourselves coming up to this large open area where there appears to be no way out. And by exploring, we find that there is a dead bushel in the center, and channels of water that were used to kind of act as a sewage system for the denizens of the town, which we learn were actually brought in not by choice of the king, not as an intellectual thinking of, oh, these people will need this thing, but because they started defiling his creations, and that is the greatest way to get someone's attention who is so focused on their own creation, is to start defiling them. And so he has now met their needs in the most fine, get out of my way possible. He has these sweeping rivers of water that sweep away every single thing that he doesn't want to deal with of his citizens. And it is our job to re-release these waters, and along with it, the consequences of them. And that is the ivy. This plant that we actually get to harbor, and we get to guide and help grow. We nurture these plants to act as our tools to solve puzzles now. We use our water balloons that we've been gifted in this area to guide the plants through. Now, here is the interesting part, in my opinion, is that we are actually... This is the slowest part of the game. Hands down, it is the slowest part of the game. And it's not because it's big. It is kind of bigger, but it's because we have to slow down and pay attention to the plants and lead it through the city. We are literally nurturing the solution to the puzzle. And we can't really rush it. There's no way to rush this. You just genuinely have to walk the plant throughout the entire city. And we are now using the hubris of the king, the consequences of his dismissiveness, to our advantage. In fact, we find out later that this is the least favorite thing of the king's. Even though it's so beautiful and gorgeous, he hates it because he didn't make it. He doesn't get to curate it. He doesn't get to control it. They act out on their own. That can't be allegorical, can it? Surely not. We'll find out later. And he creates this beast to consume the entirety of the plants. In fact, we've seen him swimming through the water, this huge monstrosity. It could be allegorical for greed, it could be allegorical for pride, it could be allegorical. Who knows? Who knows? But it's there nonetheless. And it ate the entirety of the plants, and then we now get to reuse the consequences of the king's actions to navigate the city ourselves. And we find ourselves reaching the airship, which will lead us to the consequences of the king's creations. Well, that didn't exactly go to plan. We hop on the airship and we use it to take ourselves towards the Swan. But once again, we are being led somewhere. We are not chasing, we are following. And we find ourselves falling out of the sky into the forest. And you know what? When push comes to shove, whenever you're a king and you try to create a kingdom, but there are no people in it, and then you try to adjust your life for those people, but inevitably you do not make something that they want and they eventually leave, then what's the point of being a king? What's the point of owning a kingdom? So you may as well run away to the forest, where it's dark, and there's no lights to paint by. Except for some, which is honestly one of the cooler ways to change up and shift the dynamic that we've been using, because currently we've gone from flat white, pure flat white, to then shadowed nuance in the kingdoms to now complete darkness. And this is also a really cool thing. They have taken the puzzle situation, the very, very nice, simple, clean, take your time, figure out the game, go at your own pace, where you explore and discover on your own. In the first one, it was completely our own to control and discover, where we would throw paint blobs and go everywhere, and whatever we found is what we knew and what we saw. And then the next one is we're just kind of a guided experience through the city, very linear in the way that we approach the problem, very constructed. But now, we don't get a choice in the matter. Now, it is our job to follow. It is our job to abide. It is our job to be cautious. Because there is now an enemy that can kill us. And it's not hubris, in spite of the themes that are concurrent. It is these spiders that were hinted at in the shadows of the kingdom. They were there whenever we released the water to let the ivy grow. They were there in the tunnel as we transitioned from one zone to another. And here they are again, except in complete and total darkness, where they are not afraid of us. But they are still afraid of light, and that is our only guiding thing. It is our jobs to hone in and focus on this little light as it guides us towards our next final goal. What a great way to add tension to a puzzle game, by the way. What a fantastic way to really make you pause and go, oh shit, I've been taking my time with this game, and now I'm not allowed to. I have to keep up. I have to show up, and I have to actually respond and react to the things that are happening instead of allowing myself to go at my own internal pace. I have to respond to what the game wants me to respond to. That's kind of awesome. That's kind of really good. And now we get to his house, his new kingdom, his kingdom per se. It's just a regular 2-story house where they introduce kind of a new fun mechanic, which is construction, baby. Who wants to be an architect? Not me. But this is a really cool mechanic. And specifically, they play with the idea of kind of like the first idea that we played with in the first level of whatever happens in this world happens in the next one. But instead of it being in different places in the room, it's once you affect the underworld, you affect the overworld. So when you make plans on the house, it becomes a part of the house. Like whenever we have to construct stair steps, and we then get to use those stair steps to enter the home. And then we now have to construct and finish the house so that we can then reach the king. Whoa. Before we move on, let's not forget why we're here. I know that the king is important, and he's kind of been a mainstay of what we're doing here, but why were we here? It's to follow our mother's unfinished swan. And for those of you who are paying attention, you may have noticed that our mother is the king's wife. Right? We notice this pretty distinctly, actually, that our mother was created by the king as a project. And then left unattended, the wife began painting herself, almost in the image of him. In fact, it says that she is his equal, created to be so similar to him. And it's very telling that she keeps making unfinished projects, unfinished paintings, and that is what we are pursuing. So this just begs the question, are we one of the queen's unfinished projects? Or are we one of the king's projects? Or are we just Monroe, a kid? Who knows? We'll have to keep going to find out. And so let's go see what the king is up to. Of course, he's been where he's been the whole time, and has been the entire time that we've heard about him. In his head. So we begin making our way up his statue, and in doing so, we also begin to watch it collapse. As we make our way into his mind, everything that stood to represent him fell down around us. And then we found ourselves inside his head. Outside, this beautiful statue had sunken into the water, so there was nothing to do but listen to him recount his dream that he was dreaming. And in it, he described us. He described his kingdom, he described his next kingdom, and then he described his home, and then he described his statue. He described it all, and he described what we did as we went through it, as we pursued it, as we participated in it, and how he was distraught to watch it change, how distraught he was to see that the things that he had built to stand the test of time were not going to stand at all. And honestly, at the end of it, he's kind of happy that he made it anyway. And as a gift from a father to a son, a moment of acceptance that his time is over, he hands us a brush. And he says, I hope that this makes you as happy as it made me. And then it's time for us to leave. We walk outside of his head, and we find that we can only do one thing, that we are so tired that we want to lay in bed and go to rest. But before we do, we finish the swan. We also make it children. Cute little swan children. So what does it all mean? Well, I actually have been mulling this over, and I've come to two conclusions, two stories that it may be trying to tell, both from the things that it asks us to do, and the story that it literally tells us. From what I can tell, it is a story of a man who is obsessed with making something that's going to outlast him, making something that is so perfect that it will stand the test of time. But in doing so, he ignores the things that make things perfect. For his first kingdom, he thinks that no color is good enough to paint it, and so he leaves the kingdom unfinished, uncolored. And then next, he builds a kingdom for people to stay in, for people to exist in. And yet he wants it to be so pristine that it doesn't have the function of being what a kingdom's purpose is, and that is for people to live in. And so every time that he has to do something for the kingdom, it is in spite of himself, knowing that it is ruining the foreverness of his creation, while not recognizing that it's also allowing it to be what he wants it to be in the first place, creating the kingdom to allow it to be a kingdom. And then finally, a home. A house. After all his subjects are gone, he makes a home for his wife and soon-to-be child. But even in doing so, in trying to make the perfect home, in the obsession of making the perfect house for him and his perfect wife, he forgets the one thing that truly makes a house a home: a family. And by trying to be perfect, he forgot to be a father. He forgot to be a husband. And that is reflected in his wife, in her inability to finish projects, and her ability to abandon projects. And we, as their child, pursue it. Now here comes the second message, in my opinion. The second message is done through the child, actually. In living life, as you grow up and learn to outlove your parents, as you do outlast your parents and follow in their footprints, what we often do is very similar. First, we're going to kind of step on the things that they had come before them. Whatever that may be, that could be a career, that could be a hobby, it could be their free time, it could be anything. But as a child, we are going to consume that. We are going to make it our own. And then next, we're going to appreciate the things that come next. But in doing so, we're also able to grow past it. This is referenced with the vines and the ability to kind of cover his kingdom with something new, something refined and pretty. And then finally, we complete the projects they did not. This is represented by the house. We complete the floor plan, and by in doing so, we complete the floor, the steps that walk us up into the house, and then finally, we destroy their legacy and replace it with our own. As we walk into the kingdom's statue, it crumples. And the only thing left standing is us. And in doing so, we finish what came before us to then go on to make something completely new for someone else to cover over.